The historical context of Native American scalping. Let us engage in a discussion regarding this topic. Historical records suggest that various cultures have practiced the removal of body parts from their deceased, or, in some instances, living adversaries. Scalping specifically refers to the extraction of all or part of the scalp, complete with hair, from an enemy's head. This act was often performed as a means of showcasing valor, as a symbol of vengeance, or as part of spiritual or ceremonial rituals. While evidence of scalping can be traced back approximately 5,000 years in Europe, this discussion will concentrate on the history of scalping in North America and the importance it held within various cultures. One of the earliest documented instances of scalping originates from the Mesolithic era, discovered at a hunter-gatherer burial site in Sweden. Additionally, several human remains from the Stone Age Urtebo culture in Denmark exhibit signs of scalping. A particular individual unearthed in a grave in Sweden had been scalped around 5,000 years ago, with similar practices noted in China during the same time frame. Scalping has been a persistent practice throughout human history. The Greek historian Herodotus noted that Scythian warriors, a nomadic group residing north and west of the Black Sea, were required to present an enemy scalp to their king in order to partake in the spoils of war. Other historical accounts suggest that the Anglo-Saxons and Franks engaged in scalping well into the 9th century. Archaeological investigations of Native American remains have revealed evidence of scalping wounds on skulls. One such skeleton, dating from the Middle Mississippian culture, which spans from approximately 800 to 1500 AD, exhibited these wounds. A study conducted by Plains anthropologists uncovered ancient remains in Nebraska, indicating that individuals had been scalped, with some likely surviving significant infections, all occurring prior to European contact. It is evident from a historical perspective that scalping was a widespread practice among numerous nations across North America. At the site of the Crow Creek Battle, where it is believed that the Siouan and Caddoan peoples engaged in conflict, archaeologists from the University of South Dakota uncovered the remains of at least 486 individuals. This battle is estimated to have occurred between the years 1300 and 1400, with many of the deceased showing signs of having been scalped. While not all Native American nations practiced scalping, it was a common practice among many. Scalps were seen as symbols of power and status, and the act of scalping was often associated with spiritual beliefs regarding the afterlife and the transfer of power. The act of taking a scalp from an enemy held great significance. Young warriors were particularly eager to claim their first scalp in battle, as it demonstrated their bravery and skill. This eagerness was also present among older, more experienced warriors, as possessing multiple scalps served as evidence of their contributions to their people's defense. Warriors frequently displayed the scalps of their enemies, adorning their horses or showcasing them within their villages, teepees, and lodges. Each scalp collected symbolized a defeated foe, allowing warriors to keep a record of their kills. Scalping was not limited to men. The act of taking a woman's or child's scalp was also regarded as honorable, as it indicated that the warrior had ventured deep into enemy territory. Native Americans held a deep reverence for their hair, with many tribes viewing human hair as a source of personal spiritual power and a vessel for the soul. The act of scalping was imbued with significant spiritual meaning, and there are accounts of fresh scalps being offered as sacrifices to supernatural entities. In the eastern woodlands, certain tribes preferred the distinctive Mohawk or Mohican hairstyle, which featured a lock of hair or a roach on an otherwise shaved head, serving as a visual declaration of courage. This hairstyle was also a taunt to adversaries, as it made the scalp easier to remove. Accounts vary regarding how fellow tribesmen treated survivors of scalping, with practices differing from tribe to tribe. Certain individuals were marginalized or even regarded as spectral figures, with their reintegration into the tribal community being strictly forbidden. Conversely, others were honored and revered, as they were perceived to be influenced by spiritual forces. Additionally, accounts from the 1800s provide a comprehensive depiction of the experience of scalping. One notable account is that of Josiah Wilbarger, who encountered an attack by the Comanche near present-day Austin, Texas. Despite being shot with arrows and scalped, he survived the ordeal. Wilbarger recounted the experience of having his scalp removed as unexpectedly devoid of pain. He likened the sensation to the distant rumble of thunder. As European settlers arrived and interacted with indigenous peoples, they were introduced to this practice. The earliest written French account dates back to 1535. Later, French artist Jacques Versemoine observed the Timucuan's scalping methods along the St. Johns River in Florida. He noted that they utilized sharp reeds, more effective than any steel blade, to slice the skin of the head down to the bone, encircling it completely before removing it, while the hair, measuring over 1.5 feet, remained attached. Following this, they would excavate a hole in the ground, igniting a fire with a smoldering ember. The scalps were then dried over the flames until they resembled parchment. The bones and scalps were affixed to the ends of their spears, which they carried home in a display of triumph. Upon returning to their village, they conducted a victory ceremony, solemnly attaching the limbs and scalps of the defeated to poles. When the English encountered the Powhatan Confederacy in what is now Virginia, the indigenous people, an antiquated strategy was employed to suppress their boldness. In 1608, they displayed to the English 24 scalps obtained during an assault on a rival tribe. The first Dutch individuals to encounter scalps in North America were those who ventured into Iroquois territory in 1634. The Spanish were also introduced to this practice, although they were already familiar with similar customs from South America. The European colonization of North America exacerbated intertribal conflicts, which in turn led to a rise in the practice of scalping. The act of scalping was commercialized by Europeans who compensated their native allies for scalps taken from rival tribes. Initially, these payments were made in goods, but they later transitioned to monetary compensation. During a period marked by numerous conflicts, 6 wars were fought between New England and the Iroquois Confederacy on one side and New France and the Wabanaki Confederacy on the other, spanning 75 years and commencing with King William's War in 1688. All parties involved engaged in scalping victims, including non-combatants, throughout this frontier warfare. Bounty policies that were originally aimed solely at Native Americans were later expanded to include enemy colonists. From at least the 1700s, various European colonizers scalped Native Americans as a means of providing evidence of having killed a Native individual. Colonial authorities offered bounties for the scalps of deceased Native Americans. For instance, colonial governments in New England issued over 60 scalp bounties from the 1680s to the 1750s, typically during various conflicts between colonists and Native Americans. Among the New England colonies, Massachusetts utilized scalp bounties the most extensively. The Lieutenant Governor of Massachusetts issued one of the most infamous scalp bounty proclamations in 1775. This proclamation, known as the Spencer-Phipps Proclamation of 1755, offers insight into the functioning of the system. The reward for a man's scalp was approximately $12,000 in today's currency, while the bounty for a woman's scalp was half that amount, and slightly less for a child's scalp. Colonizers who perpetrated violence against indigenous populations were often rewarded with land and financial compensation, thereby extending the reach of settlers while forcibly removing native peoples from their ancestral territories. Such actions were prevalent across the entire frontier. During the American Revolution, scalping, which colonizers deemed a barbaric practice associated with Native Americans, despite occasionally engaging in it themselves, became a strategic tactic employed by both factions. In the wake of colonial conflicts, both patriots and loyalists actively encouraged their native allies and resorted to scalping as a method of instilling fear in their adversaries, whether those adversaries were indigenous individuals, Englishmen, or fellow Americans. Each side asserted that the opposing faction's use of scalping exemplified the savagery of their cause. This pattern continued during the War of 1812. In the 1800s, amid the Apache-Mexican Wars, the Mexican states of Sonora and Chihuahua offered bounties for Apache scalps, while Apaches reciprocated by scalping Mexicans. These bounties attracted settlers, escaped slaves, and even other indigenous peoples. The Tehama Massacre took place in California in 1851. The United States Army and civilians scalped numerous indigenous men, women, and children. Scalping also occurred during the Sand Creek Massacre on November 29, 1864, when a 700-man contingent of U.S. Army volunteers attacked a village of Cheyenne and Arapaho in southeastern Colorado Territory, resulting in the deaths and mutilation of an estimated 70 to 163 Native Americans. There are few well-documented accounts from scalping survivors. One notable account is that of Robert McGee. In 1864, McGee's family embarked on a journey westward in search of a better life, aiming for Leavenworth, Kansas. They joined a wagon train traversing the challenging landscape. Unfortunately, Robert's parents did not survive the arduous conditions, leaving him an orphan. Upon reaching Fort Leavenworth, Robert sought to enlist in the Army, but was turned away due to his age of only 14. Robert McGee ultimately secured a position with a freight company responsible for transporting supplies to Fort Union in New Mexico. In the summer of 1864, he took on the role of teamster for a wagon train organized by this company, which was accompanied by a U.S. Army escort for added security. On July 18th, weary from the oppressive heat, the group opted to set up camp near Walnut Creek, approximately 1 mile from the Army's position. That night, they were ambushed by Sioux warriors under the command of Chief Little Turtle. The Sioux warriors swiftly overpowered the unprepared teamsters, resulting in fatalities and the looting of their wagons. The attack claimed the lives of between 8 and 14 settlers. Although Robert McGee sustained injuries, he remained conscious. In a brutal act, Chief Little Turtle severed a significant portion of scalp and hair from McGee's head, measuring 64 square inches, starting just behind his ears. Believed to be dead, McGee was later discovered by the Army and received medical attention. He gradually regained his health and eventually made a complete recovery. Over time, the practice of scalping waned as hostilities between settlers, the Army, and Native American tribes diminished. Today, scalping serves as a stark reminder of the violence and harsh realities of life in earlier times. It reflects the conflicts and cultural complexities that have shaped the history of North America. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting histories.